I'm going to talk to you about something very personal today because, and this 4.0 is not a new software release, it is not, so please. I want to have a meaningful conversation with each one of you because I know you're here for a reason, your time is precious, and you're all here to do something different and to create some kind of change. So over the next few minutes, let's have that conversation. I want to focus and lay the groundwork for our conversation today. 3 things that I have observed or I want to talk about. The first one is a question. Are you serious about change? And change in terms of positive change. My session is more about the future. It's about technologies that will change our lives. And how can we all be part of that? How can we all have a contribution to the world of tomorrow? So are you serious about change? Say, raise your hands and say "I" if you are. Nobody's ready for change? Okay, excellent. So this is positive change, folks, okay? I know you all are poised for change, to grow in your lives, to do better than you're doing today, whether it's in your job, it's in your career, it's your finances. I think that's one common thing between everybody here. We all are looking forward to doing something better in our lives. So that's across the board. Now, change is not easy. Change is probably the most difficult thing that human beings have ever had to do in their entire lives. In fact, in the whole human civilization. But change is also about accepting possibilities. It's not only about being disrupted by new technology and new things that are happening, the driverless cars and so on. It's about imagining the future, and it's about saying, hey, I think that's possible. Everything that you see in the world today has been somebody's idea. Somebody thought about it, somebody worked on it, somebody produced it. So everything that you see in the world outside is somebody thinking about change. And that's how we've been able to move on, one step at a time, as a civilization, and be where we are today. The third point is about technology. Now, technology is penetrating every aspect of our lives. Whether it's your dinner table, it's your work, technology really is not going to leave us alone. It will be there forever unless somebody pulls the master switch and we all are without power, right? But I don't see that happening anytime soon. And so in order to really maximize the value from our lives, to do better of what we do, and to look forward to those outcomes that we want to build in our personal lives, at our work lives, we've got to adopt to technology. And this message is for everybody, whether you like cell phones or not, whether you like a software or not, whether you like technology or not, it's there to stay. So adoption to technology is not a choice. In fact, it's everything. If you want to be part of a world that's transforming in many, many different ways, then you've got to become a friend of technology. And so these 3 things, I'd like you to keep them in mind throughout this session, and in fact, through the next few days. I was doing a bit of research about Canadian cities, and I thought, hey, let me pull some stats about Canadian cities and municipalities and wow everybody with the fact that, hey, there's so much going on. But there's too much news out there. There's news about cities, large cities spending too much money, more money than they have on things that we don't need. There's problems with transits in larger cities and so on and so forth. There's issues with healthcare. And there's multiple other problems that you will find happening in the world today, happening in Canada, in your neighborhoods today. And so we can't ignore the fact that there's issues out there that need to be solved. There's people out there that need to change. There's things there out there that we need to enable. It's a part of life, so let's accept the fact that change is everywhere, and maybe change is needed in many different things as well. Now, interestingly, the world of tomorrow, as I see it, and I am a technology futurist, I do not have a crystal ball. I can't tell the future by closing my eyes, but I can look at trends, I look at technologies, and I see what is the future of the world. What is the future of industries? What is the future of innovation? And I can come up with analysis on what really is going to happen tomorrow. So the world of tomorrow is going to be very different. And what's the reason for that? The reason is that technology, again, is taking over so many different functions, so many different aspects of our lives, from connected cars to connected homes, smart cities, better productivity, cell phones in our pockets, artificial intelligence. There's many, many, many things that are happening that will completely change the way we look at things. I hope you guys can, if you were in the workforce maybe 15 years ago or 20 years ago, there was no internet. We all were using fax machines. Work was really, really nice. We didn't have so much pressure to respond to emails, to look up our chats, to respond to tickets. I mean, life was really easy. But fast forward 20 years today, the world is different. So I guarantee you that the next 10 years will be more different than they are today, because the rate of innovation and the rate of change in the world is becoming more faster. Technology is evolving at a faster rate than it has been in the past. So we have more of an exponential growth rather than a linear growth of technology. So please expect more change in the world that you live in the next few years than you have ever seen in the past. Here's an article that I found on Wired magazine. Self-driving cars will kill people. Who decides who? Now, we're not even talking about whether self-driving cars will be on the roads. We're already assuming they will be, and we're in fact debating the fact that if they kill people, who decides who will die? I really find that very funny. But this is the world we are heading towards. Blockchain is being looked at many different companies as a huge enabler of results. The financial sector, if you've heard about it, is really devastated and afraid of what blockchain could do for their industries. The accounting industry, the legal industry, name it, and anywhere you have a transaction, blockchain is expected to disrupt that industry. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and what that really means. Smart cities are a focus where the places where we live and work will change. They will change as a result of technology penetrating every aspect of that city, from infrastructure to buildings to roads to cars. And we see some of that happening right now. If you've visited McDonald's or one of the newer design stores of a quick-serve chain, maybe you've seen a kiosk where you can order your food yourself and pay right there and then just wait for your food to arrive. So that's happening. That wasn't happening 5 years ago or 2 years ago. So things are changing. If you notice, things are changing. There's also focus on machine learning and artificial intelligence. Internet of Things. How will these technologies change my world? And that's a question we all ask. Are these technologies going to take away our jobs? Am I going to lose my job because AI will take over my job in the next few years? There's a huge possibility that many technologies of tomorrow will replace what we do on a repetitive basis. IBM did an acquisition of, and they have an artificial intelligence platform that was able to analyze 50 million brain scans in a record amount of time, just to study brain patterns, just to study disease in the brain and how disease progresses. Now, if we were to analyze these 50 million brain scans one by one, manually, I don't think we would ever finish that task. And so that's the advantage that AI, as an example, brings to changing the outcome, to accelerating something. And we'll talk about that in just the next few minutes. Before we head there, I want to give you guys an insight on where we are in terms of industry in general. If you have any knowledge about the industrial revolutions, I know we were not there in 1784 when the first industrial revolution came about, but that's really when we started figuring out, okay, there's something big happening. There's a revolution that's taking place. And that started with the first industrial revolution when the steam engine was invented. All of a sudden, you could now do things through a machine. There were more outcomes, there were more businesses that were using that technology, not just to transport people from one place to the other, but to use some of that in industry, in manufacturing. Then came electricity, where it could be transported to a longer distance and scale could be utilized. Now you were able to transport electricity from one place to the other and use that to create a different outcome in different factories in different places. Then came automation that rapidly changed how fast do we produce goods. And now we are in an age that is called as the cyber-physical age. This is the start of the fourth industrial revolution. And this is different because now the fourth industrial revolution is all about man and machine coming together to create outcomes that were never there before. If you follow news, technology news, you probably would have seen that Elon Musk of Tesla is planning to do a project with artificial intelligence and people and connected cars. We don't know a lot about it, but that's the direction where technology is going. We hear a lot about AI, and I give you an example as well, where artificial intelligence will replace a lot of the things that we do, where Internet of Things will work with artificial intelligence to do things that we can't even imagine. So all these things collectively, where man and machine work collaboratively, is leading us into the fourth industrial revolution. Here are some predictions by the World Economic Forum. Now, World Economic Forum is a leading, thought-leading body of the world. They engage in meaningful discussions. They talk about technology, and it's a collection of global technology leaders who know and who design the tomorrow that we all live. Here are some of the predictions that they've done. We will have something called the humanized internet. It's not going to be about just business outcomes, but there will be a human element to the internet. Maybe all of us will be embedded with chips or sensors that will detect something and do something. There's so many different possibilities. A lot of these predictions are something we can relate to, fewer fancy phones and cheaper, more widespread solar power, but many of them are very, very serious. For example, printable organs. The world of 3D printing is changing. It's changing a lot of things. And imagine a time when a loved one needs an organ transplant and we could just print it. We could just print it, and that'll completely change the way we look at healthcare. The Internet of Everywhere is about the Internet penetrating every aspect of our lives. I work with a lot of different groups within the industry, and wearables is one of them, where our clothing will be Internet enabled. And if we're too hot or we're too cold, that information might trigger something in our clothing that'll have a counter effect. It might cool us down or it might warm us up. There's just so many different things that are happening. The point is, within all these predictions, many of them will come true in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Guaranteed. They will happen because what is happening right now in industry is taking us to that point. Now, I really believe that we are one of the greatest generations to ever inhabit this planet. So all of us who are in the world today, we're living, breathing, we're conscious, we know what's happening out there. We are the greatest generation. This includes the boomers, the zoomers, X, Y, Zs, all of us together. And the reason for this is because we're seeing so many changes through technology, so many positive changes through technology, that these have never, ever been done before. I know we talk a lot about the newer generations, and we're all sometimes frustrated with the millennials, how they work, or the next generation after them, how they will work. But they have problems of their own. And I'll talk about a little bit on that. One of the reasons why we are in the greatest time for humanity is because we can use technology, people as people, where people at the end of the day, no matter what generation you belong to, or no matter what nationality, what country, what role, what job title you hold, we all, at the end of the day, are people. And we can utilize technology to create positive outcomes. And it has never been possible in a way that it has been possible now. So to learn a little bit more about what are some of the core technologies that will be so significant in the future that will change these outcomes, that will affect the industry that you are in, that will affect the way cities work, municipalities work, towns work, that will affect the way people who inhabit the towns, cities, municipalities, villages where you guys work. These are the technologies that will affect those people. And as a result, they are going to affect you. At the end of the day, I know you all work in a specific vertical, a sector, but you're also consumers of these things. You're also users of an iPhone or an Android phone. You also live in homes. You probably have a Nest thermostat, and you've got needs and wants. So all these things affect you in two different ways. One, it affects the people that you serve, and then it affects you as consumers as well. So we really need to embrace these things and understand them in order for us to really create some change based on these. So if you really want to excel in your roles as solution providers, as service providers, I find it very relevant to understand the technologies that are shaping the communities that you guys serve. I promise this will be painless. First one, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. Now, these are three of my favorite technologies that I feel are going to be fundamental in changing the world. There's many other technologies out there, cloud being one, 3D printing, big data, analytics. There's so many other that form a subset of all these different technologies. But for me, this is the cream of what is going to change the world. The challenge is that at some level, many of us are still struggling with the fact that we're not on cloud yet. And I hear it all the time. Are you on cloud? Well, yeah, no, yes, and no. Or how automated is your infrastructure? Well, it is, but it's not. And it's fine, because change does not happen all at once. It takes time. But there's a formula to creating change and to sustaining it. And I'll talk about that later on during my session. Going back to the three technologies that will change our lives, and a couple of them are already changing our lives, and I'll give you examples on what's happening out there in the world. Let's look at the Internet of Things. To simplify it as much as I can, the Internet of Things is about connecting devices to the Internet so that they can generate information that we can use to take an action. It's as simple as that. So if your kettle is connected to the internet, you might laugh and say, well, why do I need my kettle to connect to the internet? Isn't that funny? It is. It's cool. I think it's the silliest idea ever. But if you live, or if your lifestyle demands, or if you need, imagine you're in a hospital and you're in a position that you cannot move. I'm giving you a very extreme example here. The ability to control devices that perform some certain functions for you is invaluable. Switching on a kettle is a mammoth task for people who need to get up and who can't get up because of whatever reasons. So that's how, as solution providers, as innovators, as people, and all of you, I'm counting all of you as innovators because you're here and you work with technology on an everyday basis, so you're in this with me. So we have to think about solutions in a way that other people cannot think about them. When you have a person coming into, let's say, the municipality, or they call you for support, or you meet an end user customer, a citizen, and they ask you a question about, I'm going to come up with this. They ask you a question about your municipality portal, and they say, hey, how do I go there and how do I do this? They're expecting you to be the experts at that, right? They're expecting you to know the answers, even though you might not know everything. So everybody has to take on that role of being a technologist, of being an innovator, of not knowing everything, but having the ability of saying, hey, I completely understand your question. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to find out because I'm inquisitive. I'm going to figure out how that technology works and could help you, or whatever the question may be. So going back to the Internet of Things, applications such as the Internet of Things that can connect to any device have a lot of use. I work with the real estate industry a lot, and I'm speaking at their conference in Toronto in 2 days as well. The real estate industry is completely being transformed because of something called smart cities. And smart cities are about connected buildings, different experiences of tenants within those buildings, connectivity within those buildings, and we're not talking about just a Wi-Fi connection. We're talking about a thermostat that can be remote controlled. We're talking about appliances that can be remotely switched on and switched off. So the buildings of tomorrow are going to be organisms that generate tremendous amount of data. It's like the aircraft today. They say that a transatlantic flight today generates about 6 gigabytes of data. Did you know that? 6 gigabytes of data generated on a transatlantic flight. And it's information about the sensors, the air pressure, everything that's happening within that aircraft is contained in that information, the 6 gigabytes that are generated. And so aircraft manufacturers, airlines can use that information to figure out what's going on, how to make things more efficient, and use that information for different purposes. So coming back to the Internet of Things, if you have constituents, you have citizens, you have people living in your communities whose homes are now connected, who are super connected to the world using Internet of Things, they have Nest thermostats, they've got this entire new world. Imagine you woke up to that world tomorrow. Would you be ready to answer their questions about technology? Hey, how does my Fitbit connect to the municipality portal because I have to pay my bill? Like Dwayne said, I have to pay my tax bill, but I want to do it through my Fitbit. It's impossible. So these are the things that are happening with people who live in cities and towns. The greatest thing about the Internet of Things is that the information that we can derive from devices can be used for certain actions. I pointed to my heart rate monitor here. It's a Fitbit or a Garmin device, and it calculates the number of steps I take. That's all it does, measures my heart rate, and does a bunch of other things. Now, I find it an excellent tool for me to be motivated to take my 12,000 steps at the end of the day. If I'm short by 2,000, I'll go on a walk, and I'll take those 2,000 steps. Now, imagine the fact that if I am diabetic, and my doctor really wants me to go on that regimen of walking every single day, this could be a lifesaver for me. It could save me a heart attack maybe 5 or 10 years from now. So that's the implication of a simple device that I'm using to gather information about myself and to change my behavior. Just one example. So the idea of Internet of Things is about connecting devices and connecting people within cities and infrastructure so that they can unlock value. Now, Internet of Things will expand. You will see a lot more people using devices such as Nest thermostats. I have one at home, and I love it. You can control the temperature of your home remotely. You can switch on your heating. You can switch off your cooling. And it all leads, in the end, to energy efficiency for me. Some of the other uses of the Internet of Things, again, in hospitals, monitoring patients. I talked about texting cows at a conference and everybody laughed. But literally, texting cows are real. So in Holland, one of the projects, and I think they're doing a lot more in the US as well, one of the projects was to embed cows with a sensor. Essentially, they just swallow it, and the sensor measures their heart rate, their digestive system, their body conditions. So when the cows are out there grazing in hundreds of hectares of a farm, it's easier for the farmer to check what's going on with their cows. or the cow needs a healthcare checkup, and so on and so forth. So that's how one application of IoT exists in farming. You then have self-driving cars, and somebody expressed an interest yesterday in learning more about them. But self-driving cars are no longer cars. I find a Tesla a car, it's a car to the least extent. It's more of a computer that moves. How many of you actually use your cell phone to make phone calls? I use it for other things most of the time. It's a cell phone in the end, but it's a computer to start off with. So that's how things are shifting in a different direction. And so you will see more connected homes, more smart cities, and so on. And that really is the idea of Internet of Things. So now you guys are experts in IoT. I keep on using the term Tomorrow 4.0. This is not an official industry terminology, but this is something that I really believe in, is that with Industry 4.0, with so many different things, we're looking at a tomorrow that's a version 4.0, and we all need to understand what that brings. Another technology that's shaking up the financial world, that's really scaring banks, is something you might have heard of. It's called blockchain. And blockchain is all about accountability. Blockchain is all about tracing any transaction that happens. It could be a smart contract, it could be a financial exchange of money, but it has a tremendous amount of security behind it so that there's no margin for error. Now, in industries such as freight forwarding, financial transactions, loans, land registries, blockchain can form a pivotal amount of support and structure in order to give end users that security that their information is not being stolen. And even if somebody hacks into that information, they will be able to do nothing with it. And that's the idea behind blockchain. If you've heard about cryptocurrency, or you've heard about Bitcoin as an example, Bitcoin is based on the blockchain technology, and it's just one outcome from the technology itself. For me, the biggest thing that Bitcoin brings is trust. And for you guys, it can be an enabler to create trust between municipalities, between different branches of the public sector, and the end citizens. I mentioned the word land registry, and we know how land registry records are recorded, and they're stored in a database. And there's always an element of somebody breaking into it, or somebody changing something in there that I could lose my 100 acres of land that I have somewhere in, I don't know, Toronto. I'd be lucky to have that. But then if a technology like blockchain secures that information, there's no way anybody can ever hack into it. Because it's going to take them, if you calculate the time it takes, it'll take them 10,000 years to break that code. Now, realistically, those are the calculations. Or it'll take them 200 years to break that code. So it's impossible from a technology perspective to do that. So some of the examples of blockchain in actual use are in smart contracts, logistics. The legal industry is looking into blockchain. The accounting industry is looking into blockchain as a disruptor as well. Protecting healthcare data, and so on. So some of these things, I'm sure you can identify with them because you work with these industries in your towns and cities. And trust me, blockchain is fast becoming a major disruptor. In fact, it's deemed as a fundamental technology. It's no longer a disruptive technology. A disruptive technology goes in there, changes a few things, changes the way something works, and then stays there. A fundamental technology creates everything from scratch. And that's what blockchain does. It's very interesting. I highly recommend that you guys learn a little bit more about it. Search the internet and see what's happening on blockchain. Last but not least, artificial intelligence. Now, for me, artificial intelligence is all about automation. If any of you has used Netflix, Amazon, then you already have worked with AI. Trust me. These websites are powered by AI, The recommendations that you see in those engines when you do a purchase and it recommends something else, it's all based on artificial intelligence, where the platform knows what you've purchased and it's able to recommend something to you based on your preferences, choices, and so on. AI is also about eliminating bad choices that we might make as human beings. I gave you the example of IBM and them analyzing through Watson, I believe it was their AI engine called Watson. They analyzed these 50 million brain scans. Now, at a human level, it would be impossible to do that. How would we ever create a cure for that disease that we can never even analyze properly? There were many other cases of AI being used in the real world. I think it was the breakout of Ebola a few years ago, where Google went in and looked for patterns on where people were searching for the keywords outbreak of Ebola, Ebola cure, I believe it was Ebola. And they really honed into those locations to see where people are searching for that information. It could have been bird flu as well. And based on that, they were able to predict that this is the area in which we will have the next outbreak. And they were able to predict the locations very successfully. And so there you go. There's technology at use changing a bigger outcome and creating a bigger change. So automation of key services will enable the highest efficiency in providing services. Imagine a majority of the tasks that you guys are frustrated with and you do not want to do, because we all have those tasks that we have to do but we don't want to do. They could be automated, where you could focus on some greater tasks that nobody else can do. And trust me, there's a lot more to you, to us as people, as human beings, in terms of problem solving than we think. Some of the industries that artificial intelligence is changing rapidly: traffic management, retail, personal safety, healthcare, connected cars, they all have an element of artificial intelligence. Self-driven cars are all about AI. They're not about just a machine moving on its own will, but it's about machine learning what to do and when to do it and when to move and when to stop. So it's all about AI. And I guarantee you that AI, along with the other two technologies, will be a major and significant force that will shape our society of tomorrow. Now, the big question really is, there's all this talk about tomorrow and how things are going to change and how things will be disrupted. And the question is, how can we create a better tomorrow? What can we do in our capacities right now with what we have to change things that we think we can change? And it's Tomorrow 4.0 again. That's my idea about a new tomorrow, a tomorrow that's powered by technology. And there's a lot we can do. You probably do not have to do a PhD to change the world. You don't. But there's some essentials that you need to follow. There's principles that are time-tested principles for success, that if you follow them in today's era of disruption and transformation, you will succeed. You will be able to do something that you've never been able to do before. But before we go there, I want to talk about failure. Because unless we understand failure, unless we understand why we fail, we won't be able to go and succeed. We really have, sometimes they say that you've got to understand yourself a lot better and you've got to do that work. But now I'm talking at a more organizational basis. I'm talking more about your understanding of technology, business, life, and the future. I'm very proud to make that statement, that organizations of tomorrow will crumble under the pressure of digital transformation. Many of the organizations that are out there, companies, startups, established companies, they might not succeed and reach this 20, 30-year time frame that we're talking about in terms of a future. And there's a reason for that. Did you know that today the life of a Fortune 500 has severely declined? It used to be decades, but now it's, I think, 5 or 10 years. Companies cannot sustain themselves on the fortune list anymore because they're failing faster. So what is the reason? Why do we fail? Why do organizations fail? I want to do a disclosure here. We've got every stat available today about the millennials, and I love those guys, the new generations. How millennials shop, how they disrupt industry, how they eat food, what's their purchasing power, how are they taking over the world. And it's not about the new generation anymore, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to go back to that statement where I said, we all are part of this change. We all have to embrace that idea that millennials, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, boomers, zoomers, the generation after, we all are in this era together. So we have to work together to make sure that we succeed. And we have to create those support mechanisms in order to support everybody else around us to succeed. So let's not blame it on the millennials at all. Going back to the two reasons, I believe there's two reasons why we fail. And if you understand this, if you take anything away from my presentation today, I want you to take this slide away. So there's two reasons for failure. First reason is misunderstanding the environment in which you operate. You've been unable to read what's going on in your world. You've been unable to figure out what is happening outside. You've been unable to understand what changes have taken place in the time that you were not paying attention. So that's one reason. If you don't understand those changes, then you will surely fail. Second part is not following the right principles to adapt to these changes around you. Understanding it is half the battle won, but you've also got to be able to take the right steps to go in the right direction and to create the right change. If you get these two things right, not just at work, not just in your municipalities, but in your personal life, you can take this as a lesson for the rest of your life that you will succeed in everything that you undertake, is understanding what has changed and then taking the right action towards that in order to succeed. Now, this is what the world of tomorrow will look like. This is a chart that a company called Libelium has put out, and it's about a smart city. A smart city is not only about a big city, it's not about a large city, it's about every place where we live and we work. It could be called the towns of tomorrow, it could be called the villages of tomorrow. The point is that technology is going to penetrate every single aspect of where we live and where we work. Whether it's in the seaports where ships will have systems on board that are powered by IoT, that are powered by blockchain or artificial intelligence. It's about safety and security where fire, police, and other services come together through technology to provide better care for the communities they serve. It's about enabling safe power generation. It's about citizen safety. It's about traffic management. It's about buildings and the safety within buildings. So this is what the landscape looks like tomorrow, and this is what probably all of you will encounter in the next few years. And I really want you to be ready for it. So if we understand where we are going, we can be prepared for it. If you're going to Alaska, I suggest you take a warm jacket with you. If you're going to the Caribbean, I suggest you take some beach clothes. That's common sense. So if this is where we are headed, I think we need to prepare for this tomorrow, because if we don't, we've failed to understand our environment and we've failed to take the right action to be prepared for where we will be. Also, please remember that technology tomorrow will come to you. There won't be an explosion of it one day, but one day you will wake up and see things around you have changed. So don't go into that idea of this will never happen to my town or my city. But technology will come to you and it'll slowly penetrate everything around you and change where you live. It'll change the community that you serve in that way. So let's keep that in our mind to learn the code for success. Okay, I want you guys to join me on an exercise. It's going to be painless, I promise. I want you to work on visualizing something, okay? Let's do some visualization. There's been too much technology talk. Let's do this. Imagine a world where everything is connected. Buildings are connected to cars, everything is connected to the internet, and things are running really, really, really smoothly. Everything is just good. Now, traffic lights and poles have turned into Wi-Fi hotspots, so we don't have to look for a signal anymore because everything provides us internet, and we are connected, okay? Smart energy meters around the town are saving people tons of money. People are happy, citizens are happy, they're saving more money, they're putting more money in their pockets and using it to enrich their lives. Things such as street lights can measure noise, can detect temperature changes, weather changes, and all this information can be used to predict weather patterns, storms, and so on. How about trash cans detecting when they're half full so that they can send the right signal and the right information to the collection team so that they could optimize their routes for collection? Now, that's not a bad idea at all, right? We could do with some efficiency in garbage collection as well. What about automated parking spots? No more nightmares about finding a parking spot when you go to the mall. And you can pay online, you can do that real quick, and everything is really smooth. Some of the experiences that were touched upon earlier. Or maybe new bus stations that have engagement built into them. They have information kiosks in there, they have phone chargers, or our phones end up dying all the time. So imagine that world. Imagine your town, city, municipality being this ideal example in the next 5 years. Do you think it's possible to have all of these things? How many of you think this is a possibility? Please raise your hands. Don't be shy. Okay, so everybody else thinks it's not going to happen, which is good. Now, let me tell you the secret. Here's a city that has done all of it. Barcelona is one of the world's topmost connected and technologically advanced cities in the world. All the things that I talked about that I wanted you to visualize have already happened in Barcelona, and they're doing them right now at full scale. Because of that, they were able to save $58 million per year in water wastage. They were able to generate $50 million in parking revenues. They were able to save $37 million in streetlight energy efficiency. And they were also able to create 47,000 jobs by enabling all this connectivity. Now, talk about technology taking our jobs away. It's actually creating more jobs. So all those things that we saw are possible, and they will happen to our towns, our cities. They're happening in the United States. They're happening in some parts of Canada. So please be ready for them. Now, going back on the principles of success, and this is where we want to be in the next few years, and potentially we will end up being here, and all of you will be a big part in making this happen, because you're the people who are managing the services at a city level. So if you have a city that does all of what we saw in a couple of slides back, you will be the people who are managing that, and so you should be ready for that as well. Here are some predictions for cities in general. By 2020, 10% of cities worldwide will use street lamps as a backbone for the internet. And it's happening. If it's not happening in your towns and cities and municipalities, it will happen. By 2020, 30% of cities will use smart and robotics in nursing care and medical facilities. I can understand it can start over in the larger cities, but in many places of the world, this is happening on an everyday basis. By 2030, some cities will be operated by artificial intelligence. And this is going back to automating those repetitive tasks that we all hate. that are error-prone, that we do not want to do, and we'd rather be doing something productive in our day than to punch some numbers endlessly and make errors. And we are human at the end of the day. So these are just some top predictions that I wanted to show you for 2030. But going back to the code of success, and I'm running out of time here. They're going to kick me out. I want to point you guys to something very, how do I define it? To something that's happening around us right now. In our cities, our towns, where we live. We have issues with healthcare. We have global issues that affect us on an everyday basis. There's a war in a different part of the world, but we get affected because our tax dollars are being spent on those wars. We have world issues that affect us locally. Think about all the refugee crises in the world and how that affects us as Canadians. There's an issue with basic amenities. Some communities don't have power. They're struggling with clean water. Like, there's problems everywhere. There are also problems with things that you can't even imagine. The girl on the left, the human trafficking market is a $32 billion industry, and there's human trafficking happening in every part of the world, in Canada as well. We have issues with poverty, climate change. Now, there's so many things that you could potentially, possibly be part of to change those things, to be part of a revolution or a struggle to change that. And I'm assuming that many of you are supporting organizations and doing something for a cause or some cause, even if it's training a basketball team. The point is that there's many different things happening in Canada, in our communities right now, that need our help. And we can change those things. If you make $30,000 and above per year, and I don't need to know who makes what, you are potentially in the top 1% of people in the world. Did you know that a majority of people in the world live on less than $2 a day? So tell me about not being powerful enough to create change. You have everything that a change maker needs. You have everything that an innovator needs. You've got the capabilities, time, resources available to you to change not just these outcomes, but to change the world around you. And you can start small. There's no need to go out and fight the war that you can't win, but you can start small with where you are, with what you have. And I want you to do that starting now in your workplaces, in your homes. So let's look at the 7 principles of success that will really drive the future, that will help us be part of Tomorrow 4.0, that will help us squeeze every drop of value we can bring out from tomorrow. And I'll be really quick about this. Step 1 is we must engage. We must invest in engagement at every level. And this is not just for public-facing people where you have to engage with others. But we have to create mechanisms to engage internally within our organizations. How many of you have a weekly call with all your peers? How many of you are running monthly, weekly, quarterly programs with your teams or your constituents or your departments or your groups to talk about problems that people have and the solutions that you can collectively come with? If you don't have it, well, here's the opportunity to do that. Here's an opportunity to start now after you've gone away from this conference. In fact, I encourage you to build that agenda, that list right now of the things that you want to do immediately. We're also talking about engaging with customers, partners, people whose lives you touch or people whose lives you want to touch. People you feel are part of that future where you're going or who could be affected by that future. The new world, economy 4.0, industry 4.0, no matter what name you give it, is driven by engagement. And that's where millennials, for once, take over the mindset from all of us. They're more engaging. They're more engaging in terms of not just attention seeking, but there's a lot more engagement in the new generation. So I think we should learn that from them and build some engagement within every level of group, department, or a functional group that we have. Step number 2 is create more accountability. Now, some of the technologies we talked about do nothing but create more accountability. This device here on my wrist creates more accountability for me by measuring how many steps I take. And that's how technology creates accountability. Blockchain, as an example, creates more accountability because now you can't mess up anything because there's a trace for everything that you do. So start thinking about how accountability, not on just an everyday basis, can be a thing that you follow, but how can you enable accountability so that it's a norm, so that people follow it with passion and they want others to follow it as well. Step number 3, the world of tomorrow is hugely going to be changed and driven by knowledge and education. If you want to go ahead in your careers, your life, then you've got to gather more information and knowledge about technology in general. It doesn't matter what that is. It doesn't matter if you read an article about Internet of Things or blockchain or cloud. It doesn't matter as long as you go out and seek that knowledge. You've got to develop that mindset of being able to learn more and absorb more. How many of you are registered in an open learning university right now? For example, a massive online learning, also called as MOOCs. Anybody registered on Coursera or edX? I have one person. So there's an opportunity right there. The world's greatest institutions, all of their logos are on the screen right now. The world's greatest institutions, including Harvard, Princeton, and every university that you can think of, is giving out free courses about every conceivable topic that you can think about. You can get a certificate in those courses. It's self-paced. You don't need to ask work for money to do that, but it's for you. You can bring that knowledge inside. You can achieve that knowledge and start changing your life right there. I don't think anybody has ever failed because they had too much knowledge, because they knew too much. But this is how the new world will be driven. It'll be knowledge driven. So I really urge you guys to go on one of these websites, whether it's an edX or Coursera, or seek out these educational opportunities within your workplaces to push other people to go out and seek these opportunities. The more people around you who will be knowledgeable, the more transformation you will see in your workplaces. The more of you who know how technology works, the better discussions you will be able to have with your peers, your partners, your solution providers, your customers. And if you don't go this route, you will be left behind. You will not benefit from what the new technologies, the new economy, and tomorrow has to bring. So please do that. For those of you who remember this old axiom of Maslow's theory of self-actualization, it used to be, we studied it in university or high school. It was about us finding food, and then shelter, then love, then security, then financial security, and it was something called as the Maslow's theory of self-actualization. It's a triangle. I think today organizations need that. Organizations need to build a model for self-actualization. If all of us were to jump on a ship, it's not the Titanic, something else, a larger ship, a big ship that can accommodate all of us, and we all had to row. We had to row, and we said, hey, let's row in that direction. And everybody starts rowing in their own direction. Where do you think we will end up? We'll be right there for the next 10 minutes, and the next 1 hour, and the next many, many days. So the idea of self-actualization is about rowing in the same direction. It's about creating a value system that can propagate through an organization that is built for employees who feel the same way about the challenges that you're solving. It's about your partners and your customers being in the same team and rowing in the same direction. So once we all are aligned to do that, we will succeed. We will go and reach our destination. And you can create this model within your organizations. You can create it between 5 people or 10 people. And it's really about digging deep and figuring out, what do you stand for? Are you there to solve the problems of people that you serve? Are you there to engage with them? Are you there to entertain them? You've got to do that work and create this model for your organizations if you want to succeed in this new world, because the new world demands it. Step number 5, build solid partnerships and collaborate. If you are not partnering up with anybody, if you're not collaborating, then life is going to be hard. You cannot do everything in today's world on your own. You cannot create every outcome on your own. You've got to partner up with the right organizations, with the right partners, to create solutions that will change the paradigm, that will change things that you really, really believe in. And so really, please focus on creating those partnerships and collaboration opportunities. Partnerships are not about a one-way transaction. Partnerships are about a two-way dialogue. Collaboration is about a two-way dialogue. So in this room today, we've got about 200 people, and I don't know how many municipalities are represented. I'm going to give it a rough guess, and I'll say between 50 to 120 maybe, if that's a very rough guess. It's possible that there's people here from 100 plus different municipalities. I find this a tremendous opportunity for all of you to meet each other and figure out what you're doing. I really encourage you guys to meet everybody here over the next few days and ask everybody what are the projects that they're working on. See, the way I see it, the people that you meet have either faced the problem that you are facing right now and they were able to solve it, so now you will get a solution for your problem, or they have not solved it, so you both can collaborate together and solve it, or they don't even know that problem exists, so you can help them understand what are the challenges they can expect in the future. And that's what collaboration is all about. So that's another task. Please meet each and everybody that you can, because this is a great opportunity where everybody has come together to do something about something that you're very passionate about. Step number 6 is about creating rewards and acknowledgments. And I know Kim mentioned this earlier as well. And this is not about employee rewards only. This is not about giving, a gift card to your best performing salesperson. But in today's world, acknowledging everybody around you that adds value to your life works. Your partners, your customers, your vendors, your citizens, the people you serve, the people who serve you, there's got to be a phenomenon of rewards, acknowledgments, and sharing. Because we are still people, and we haven't been replaced by artificial intelligence yet, and I don't think we will be for many, many years, it is a core human need to be rewarded for what you do, to have satisfaction for what you do on an everyday basis, and to be acknowledged, even if there's no reward associated with that. There's no trophy, but acknowledgement does wonders. So please enable the practice of rewards and acknowledgement within your municipalities, your groups, your working groups, with your peers. You can always acknowledge your boss. You can always acknowledge your peers and your subordinates. So don't go too deep into thinking, hey, I can't say that to my boss. Of course you can tell your boss, hey, great job, and so on. So please start that revolution so that we can see those changes taking place with where you are. And number 7 is to develop a value creation mindset. We all sometimes get too bogged down with what our role is. Many times we just say, hey, what do you do? You might ask somebody, so John, what do you do? Or Jill, what do you do? Well, I'm the system administrator. That's great. You're a technical person. That's your role, to manage systems. But I think your role goes beyond that. So we need to start introducing ourselves in a different way. That, hey, I serve the needs of my community, and I support 5,000 people who live in our community. Wow, that's really empowering. So you've got to look at yourself in a different way. You've got to develop a mindset that's about creating value. So if you're puzzled about how do I create that definition, then think about how do I add value to the world that I'm in right now. And take your time in figuring that out. You can do that as a group or as an individual. Step number 7 trumps everything. Not the President Trump, but trumps everything. It is the biggest step. It is the greatest step you can take, is to think as a value creator. And be proud of who you are, because in your capacities, you work in complex environments, you support multiple technologies, you work with so many different people. And if we multiply this value creation mindset, I think our workplaces will be much better. We will be more happier with what we do. And the most important ingredient in all of this, I have 17 seconds. The most important ingredient is you. You've got to take care of yourself. You've got to acknowledge yourself. You've got to be good to yourself. You have to reward yourself. You have to think of yourself in a different way. You have to be positive about yourself. Because you do many, many things. We all do so many things in our everyday lives, from supporting our families, to working with people that we like or we don't like, to working with customers. We do a tremendous amount of work. So the most important ingredient in creating value and in succeeding in this era of Tomorrow 4.0 is you. So please focus on yourself. Where to go from here? This is the most interesting slide. I'm almost at the end. Develop a philosophy in alignment with the future. Please start thinking about the future, okay? The future is going to happen tomorrow. I know that. The future is not here yet. But we are designing the future today. We are here to define the future. We are here to understand what changes will it bring. And if you understand those changes, then you should take action on it. Engage in meaningful conversations. Speak with people about what is happening in the world. It's not only about the problems that you face, but engage in meaningful conversations. Talk about the things that you can change collectively. And make relentless execution as a foundation for success. Many of our plans fail because we do not execute on them. We all make really, really good plans, but we fail to execute on them, and that is a problem. So no matter what you decide, please focus on the execution part of it. Please focus on being passionate about executing it to the best of your ability, even if you fail. But you have to execute, because then that becomes a habit. I have a task for all of you. And the task is that please make a list, okay? Please make a list of the things you want to accomplish this week here at this conference. I talked about a few things, that you have a few opportunities of meeting people, engaging in meaningful conversations. So please make a list of meeting everybody that you can during this conference. Trust me, if you bump into someone and you just say a random hello, they will not bite you. They will say hello back, okay? Do you guys promise to do that if somebody bumps into you and says hello? Okay. So please meet as many people as you can, because it will fuel ideas. It will give you more ideas about what you need to do. Make a list for this week. I want you to make a list for this month, this quarter, and this year. It's your list. It could be a list of completely random things, but this is a list that you want to action. These are the things that you want to finish. These are the things you've been putting off. These are the things you want to put on your things to do because they matter. And one by one, start knocking them off. One by one, start completing them. Hold yourself accountable to do that, okay? And you will see change happen in many, many different ways. Once you do this, your lives will change. Once you do this, you'll be ready for this future that is driven by technology. I know Aptean is doing a lot of work, and I haven't spoken about Aptean until now, but there's a lot of change within industry that's fueling all of that. And I think there's a passion behind bringing everything together. And there's a purpose to it. So please join them for this dialogue of telling them what needs to be done in a positive way, what needs to be changed to change the experiences of the people that you serve. And collaboratively, in a partnership together, I think the world can be a different place. Your ecosystems can be a different place. Thank you so much for your attention. I love you guys. You've been an awesome audience. And I'm around for some time. If you have questions, please come up to me and just ask. My name is Ian Khan, and it's been a pleasure speaking in front of you all today. Thank you so much.
There was no help from you. The sound of the drums beating in my heart.
All right, how about one quick round of applause again for Ian Khan? Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
All right, lunch is being served just down the hall to the right, and then at 1 o'clock we start with the breakout sessions. So enjoy lunch and enjoy the breakout sessions, and we'll be around if you need anything. Thank you very much.